A young student, Josh, nervously walks to the library. He notices some dark figures behind him on his way, but he continues his journey. He eventually reaches the library, and after signing in, he sees the dark future again. He reacts suspiciously that the librarian has to ask him if he's okay. He takes the elevator into the library and stays there quietly with an adult. Upon reaching the library, he calls out to his friend Ziegler to no avail. He keeps checking around every compartment for Ziegler. Every time he runs into the elderly man again, and suddenly the lights dim, and he feels some force sucking the life out of him. On the other hand, his girlfriend Maddie goes to a club with her friend and roommate Isabel, and at the club she receives a message from another colleague sitting at the club, Tim, asking her to dance. But Tim insists he didn't send her a message. She also receives several calls from her mother, which she refuses to pick up. Isabel notices she is a little bit down and tries to check up on her. She tells Isabel that the issue is Josh, and she hasn't heard from him for the last week, and their conversation has reduced to just SMS. Isabel advises her to leave the boy, telling her that the time they spend having issues in the relationship is more than the time they spend in love. She advises that they dance, but Maddie feels so overwhelmed that she leaves. Tim jumps behind her, asking to walk her home, but she refuses. At home, she gets a voice message from her mother asking her to call back. Then another message from Josh telling her he has something to say but refuses to say it. She calls him back, but he doesn't pick up. She leaves a voice message for him, telling him that he has been withdrawing from the past few days, and now that he is reaching out to her, he is sending her an unclear message. She asks him to call her, but he doesn't do that. The following day, she realizes Isabel didn't return home that night. She calls her and she goes to school. Isabel joins her in class later, and during lunch, she asks Isabel to get her lunch, alone because she wants to get somewhere. She goes to Josh's house, and at first it seems he isn't around. She checks around and sees everything is dirty. She opens his fridge and finds worms there. He eventually comes out and goes to his laptop without answering her questions. He takes a phone cord and tells her to wait there for him. There are black signs behind his neck as he leaves for the kitchen while she keeps checking around, and she sees a rotten cat too. She screams his name and goes to check for him, only to see he has committed suicide. She screams for help immediately. She gets home later that day, calls her mother, and leaves her a voice message. She returns to school, but the school counselor asks to see her so they can walk through her trauma together. She breaks down, saying she's angry because she could have seen signs, but the counselor tries to tell her it isn't her fault. He tries to console her by saying that Josh's suicide is because he is lonely, and asks her if she also feels that day. She leaves the office and she returns home. She has a conversation with her friends, Isabel Stone and Tim, who reassure her that they are going through the same thing and that they will be fine. Suddenly, they get several messages from Josh asking them to help him. They try to understand what is wrong, and Maddie suggests that Josh's laptop may still be switched on, and she doesn't want to return to that apartment. So Stone volunteers to go there and log it off. When Stone gets there, he also sees several weird black figures. He tries to hide from them, but the black female figure keeps searching for him around the house. The following day, Maddie insists she still gets messages from Josh and wonders if Stone couldn't log off Josh's laptop. She also watches a piece of news that reports several suicides in the city. She calls Stone that evening, and she notices he sounds so weird. He first calls her Isabel instead of Maddie, and when she asks him if he can log out of Josh's computer, he refuses to reply. She asks him if he's okay, and he claims he is tired because of everything happening, and she believes him. But after she ends the call, Stone reveals black signs on his body just like Josh. Maddie finds a mail from Josh which was sent 2 days before his death. It contains some red tape and the message, "That keeps them out." She doesn't know what it means, so she goes to Josh's house and finds out the house owner has sold Josh's computer. She finds the buyer, Dex, and accuses him of sending her those messages. But Dex shows her he hasn't even plugged in the computer. After she leaves, Dex plugs the computer and sees some weird videos about people killing themselves. The following day, she meets with her friends to discuss if they also are getting messages from Josh. She asks them if they have heard from Stone and says the last time she spoke to Stone, she felt that something was wrong, and it is the same vibe she got the last time she met with Josh. They assume all is well and they leave. On their way out, Dex calls out for her and takes her home to show her the weird videos. She asks him to delete them and walks out. On her way, she sees her professor walking to the bus, but the bus driver swipes away not to hit him. She also witnesses a man jumping down from a tower. She returns home and dips herself inside the bathtub, and while there, she dreams about Josh telling her he isn't married, and she also sees the black figures. She assumes something is wrong, so she meets with her counselor, who insists she is only hallucinating. She reminds him that most of the classrooms are now empty and several people are committing suicide. But the professor insists it is a result of their minds, and it is influenced by what they claim to know about the happening in the city. Tim also tries to contact Stone by sending him a message, but he also gets the notification. Do you want to see a ghost? He clicks on the notification and he starts seeing Saver's ghosts on his computer. He also sees the message he had sent to Stone on his computer, and he realizes that it may have to do with Stone. So he visits him, but finds Stone by the wall with a knife. Right in front of him, Stone enters the wall, leaving black traces. Tim runs home and he taps his entire house with red tape. That night, while Maddie sleeps, she also gets the notification. Do you want to see a ghost? She clicks and quickly prints out the figures she sees. Dex then sees some weird videos on Josh's computer. He calls Maddie and asks her if she wants to check them. She visits to check them, and they both watch Josh confess to Ziegler that he was the one that kept the virus on his computer. He told Ziegler to contact him because he knew how to remove it, and told him they would meet at the library. A backup video shows him saying he saw something at the library and the thing sucked the life out of him. And he also made a video before his suicide. Maddie insists it was a virus, but Dex claims hackers do it all the time. That evening, while Isabel is in the laundry room, she sees the ghost in the washing machine. Dex eventually finds the solution Josh was talking about. He takes the flash and puts it in his computer, but he starts seeing weird things around his house, and the flash refuses to work. That evening, Maddie gets a very weird video message from Tim. Tim is standing right in front of her camera, and he tells her he can see her. He repeats that he is seeing her, and she keeps asking him how he can do that, but he doesn't give her any response. She feels something is wrong, so she goes to knock on Isabel's room, and she tries to check for Isabel in the room to no avail. She calls her number, and she eventually sees Isabel looking blackish and in tears. She sits Isabel down to console her. Isabel says she's dying, and Maddie tries to call the emergency line, but Isabel vanishes in her presence. She calls Dex, telling him her best friend just died, and she is coming to meet him. They pick a meeting point, and he reveals to her that he has found Ziegler and also found the drive Josh was working on. They take a car to get there, but they get into an accident on the way. They meet several other people who advise them to leave the city, but they insist on finding a solution. They get to Ziegler and find his room covered with red tape. He confesses that he was working on a telecom program with Josh until Josh allowed the spirits inside, and they could no longer control it. They ask him where the main server is, and he tells them, although he warns them there is nothing they can do. Go to the computer room, and Dex tries to upload the solution. When he does it, it works at first and the system shuts down while everything returns to normal. However, a few seconds later, the spirits return. He runs away with Maddie and they drive outside the city. They sleep off on the way, and Maddie wakes up to a notification about safe zones with no network coverage. A spirit hangs on their car, but they throw it off when they get to the safe zone. They drive away with Maddie saying the city now belongs to the spirits, but the will to live never dies. Josh is shown at the end of the movie standing by the window of his house.